I felt like if I had this success over here, it excused any behavior over here. And I think a lot of people go through life like that. My first son was born, and a couple months after, I just went on a 6-day crack smoking, drinking binge that ended with the police handcuffing me and searching my car. There's bullet holes in my car. Never really had prayed. But in that moment, I recognized that I needed some help. The thought, nobody's coming to save you until you take that first step, really hit me.
You've mentioned addict many times, and the listeners that don't know you have no idea what that's about. Talk us about your kind of lowest moment. Tell us what that whole thing was like.
My parents were 18 when I was born, so super young parents, and they divorced a year into my life. So my dad joined the army and actually left for about 6 years. So he wasn't in my life in those early years. And so I grew up in this very weird, hippie, eclectic 60s, and I had this weird world.
This is North Carolina?
It was in North Carolina. Yeah, mostly in Durham, North Carolina. My dad had moved to California. And, I made a decision when I was 13. And it was actually a pretty crushing decision for my mother, but I decided to move in with my dad. I really wanted to play sport. My mom was a drama and theater person. And I wasn't getting that part. And of course, like most boys, especially, I really was desperate for that attention from my father. I move in with him and I go from playing no sports to 6 sports. Like I literally played every sport known to man in high school. And I was all state in some things and top 10 in my class and student body president and dated some cheerleaders. I did the whole deal in high school and was, pretty well liked. And I go to college at UNC Chapel Hill and I think there's going to be a banner on my dorm, like, welcome, Charlie. We're so glad you're here. Now we can all start having fun. And what I discovered was I was very average. And a lot of people discover that when they go to college. I mean,
Yeah.
I was, there's 4,000 other freshmen that were there that had basically the same resume I had. What I figured out early, the drinking age was 18. I turned 18 like 2 weeks into my freshman year. And I'm pretty sure I was named to a couple of first team All-American drinking teams. And
And what was your drink of choice? Were you a beer guy?
Man, I was a tequila and beer guy. Tequila and beer all night, every night. And look, in the South, there's also, terrible things like Southern Comfort and just some awful, sweet bourbons and stuff.
You had like Bacardi 151. I remember that one in college.
100%. Oh my God. 151. Dude, I bartended in college illegally, because you need to be 21. But I remember being behind the bar and literally blowing flames for 20 feet with Bacardi 151 behind the bar. So thank you for that very disturbing memory.
So it started with alcohol in college.
Yeah, I was recruited to play football at Carolina. I never played. I went out for the basketball team because I still was cocky. And this is UNC. This is Dean Smith. This is all of that. I go out for the team and I make it. I make the JV basketball team at University of North Carolina. And I played for 2 years.
Some famous players there at that time.
There's a few famous players. A guy named Michael Jordan actually went there. And lo and behold, he came in my sophomore year. And I played on the same court with him, for a couple of years in practice. And it was an amazing time at Carolina. We won a national championship in 82. And it was fun, but you could only play JV for 2 years. And if you weren't good enough to get moved up to varsity, then you couldn't have that spot anymore. And basically I was hanging on by a thread, Charlie. I was drinking. I've been introduced to cocaine, which the 80s, or as I like to call them, the cocaine decade, it was really a big thing. Miami Vice. And it was just an insane time to be in college. I mean, now all times are. But other people, my fraternity brothers and friends, and I'm not advocating this, but there could be some cocaine around. They'd do a couple of lines, they'd drink, they'd go to bed at 2:00 and actually get up and go to class the next day. That was not me. And so pretty early in that experience, I learned that once I started, I was never going to stop at any particular time until there was no more money, no more drugs, no more booze. That was the only thing that would stop me. And my second semester junior year, I didn't go to a single class. And do you know the university had the audacity to ask me to leave?
Oh
Like,
my god, of course.
how
Hey,
dare they?
where is this guy?
But,
Wow,
and
you're like
then I started a 10-year, run from the time, until I was 29 years old. I moved all over the country.
now you had a gift for sales, and actually you were a very accomplished,
Yeah.
salesperson at real companies, but you did get
Uh-huh.
married, had some boys. Walk us through that.
Yeah, I mean, look, man, it turned out again, this is when I started saying that addicts are the best salespeople, partly because sincerely, we tell people all the time that I promise I'll never do that again, when we've screwed up for the millionth time. When I was living in Atlanta, and this is a very formative thing, and so a lot of the listeners will, I think, appreciate this. I was a top salesman at a company called Bally's, which was a fitness company. And my personal sales trainer in person was Zig Ziglar.
Oh
And
my god,
so
what?
and
It's like he's so
so
famous.
like, he
You
was
tell me
just
if you
he
ran
was
into this guy,
oh
you
my god,
know?
yeah. Oh my gosh, hell yeah, for sure.
Jeffrey Giffer, yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
and, when I learned how I had the natural ability to talk and to be, I think I had enough charisma and all of that, and even back then. Today, I hope that if I have one trait that I actually really like about myself, it's authenticity. It doesn't always serve me well, but
you're an athlete too, so you knew how to
yep,
set goals, you had
totally.
self-discipline.
Totally. Zig Ziglar, he taught me always answer a question with a question, as simple as, is the gold membership renewable? Well, would you like it to be? I mean, I realize that's a simple example, but you don't ever say yes or no to something. You always give a choice close. Would you like option A or would you like option B? Not, are we going to do this today? You don't give the customer an opportunity to say yes or no. You give them a choice. The sale doesn't begin until you hear the word no. I had that on my mirror for years because I really believe that. Otherwise, you're just an order taker. Like
Yeah.
if you think you're a salesperson, but all you're really doing is sitting there taking orders, you're not selling,
No.
and most of the time, what you're selling is yourself. You may have the best product in the world, but if that customer doesn't respect or like you or at least feel some warmth from you, they're not going to buy from you.
Right. Yeah, and if you believe in the product and you think the product is actually gonna
Yeah.
provide amazing value to the client, then it's a win-win and you're gonna do amazingly well
So
if
I
all
was
those
selling
things line up.
Toyotas in California, and I love Toyotas, and still to this day, I think Toyota's like the best company ever. And I
Yeah.
won their national sales contest 2 years in a row, and I sold over 700 cars a year for 2 years.
That's crazy.
And so,
Wow, I didn't know
I
that.
could sell, but I was in the bathroom doing lines off the back of the sink. And so it wasn't exactly, what I was doing. I felt like if I had this success over here, it excused any behavior over here. And I think a lot of people go through life like that. It's like, well, I'm a gazillionaire. Like, who cares if I drink 8 drinks every night? Look at how successful I am. And it took a long time for me to stop equating the two things. It took my downfall, which,
Right.
the story. My first son was born, and a couple months after he was born, for no reason, nothing happened, but I just went on a binge, a 6-day crack smoking, drinking binge that ended with the police handcuffing me and searching my car. And, there's bullet holes in my car that were, put there by my Toyota 4Runner. And, and I'm sitting there on the ground, Charlie, and I know you're a religious man, and I'm sitting there on the ground. I didn't grow up in a religious household and never really had prayed. But in that moment, I recognized that I needed some help. I really needed some help. And the thought, nobody's coming to save you until you take that first step,
Yeah.
really hit me. I prayed. I put a prayer into the universe. It's the first time ever that I had prayed that wasn't a Santa Claus prayer. It wasn't a bargain making prayer. It wasn't like, if you get me out of this, then here's what I'll do for you. It was just simply, I want this burden taken away. Like, I can't do this anymore. And I put those words out into the universe, but I put action behind it. I went to an AA meeting that night And I got up the next morning and I went for a 2-mile awful run. And I committed to do those two things every single day until I felt better. 3 years later, I had run every single day and I went to a meeting every single day for 3 years, and my life was so much better.
And what was happening those years? Because you told us you were on this very famous television show. So you went from selling cars to television.
I started a company, Charlie, when I got sober. Well, just before I got sober, I had the only company in the country that chased hailstorms. I chased hailstorms all over the world, and I did it because I made deals with insurance companies and car dealers to repair their hail-damaged cars.
Huh.
And I'm not going to go into the long version of how that happened, but you were in the service, so you can remember Fort Ord, which was in Monterey, California, out
Yeah.
there in the Monterey Peninsula. It closed. I was selling cars. I was the top salesman in the country when the base closed. And
Okay.
80% of our clientele was military. So all of a sudden, I had a job, but we had no customers. And I had heard about this crazy technique of fixing dents,
Right, right,
without
right.
painting. And I
I
started
remember
a
that.
company and I hired a few guys and we traveled, all over the country and even to Australia and Europe and other places to repair. And it was very lucrative, but it was seasonal. And this is the thing. I knew early on when I got sober that adventure was going to be like a big part of my life. And I didn't want a 12-month out of the year job. So I'd work my ass off for 6 months and fix hail damaged cars and run around crazy, even with my young family. I made enough money. We could afford to have her stay home with the kids. And it was great. And then when I came home for 6 months, man, I was Mr. Dad.
And how did you shift from that into being a television producer, which seems like a whole different skill set?
It is. And so funny enough, Mark Burnett, who most people kind of know through like Survivor or The Apprentice or some of his TV shows, he used to put on a race called the Eco Challenge. And the Eco Challenge was these 10-day heinous adventure races all around the world. And it's where I always say physically, it's where I truly learned how to suffer properly. The TV show 48 Hours found out about my story, and this is all the way back in 2000. TV show 48 Hours came out to do a whole show on me and my experience at the Eco Challenge. Here I am, this sober guy. It's in Borneo, the race is. So we're 10
Wow.
days across the Borneo jungle. This film crew comes out there to the Borneo jungle, and the low man on the totem pole was this guy named Tom Foreman. And Tom was the lowest assistant producer on the team. This 24-year-old little Jewish
Right.
kid and skinny as he 120 pounds. You have never seen anybody more out of their element in the jungle in Borneo. But I took him under my wing a bit, even though I'm doing this race,
Right.
he became kind of my guy. Flash forward, and this is the lesson. Always be nice to everybody because you never know when you're going to be working for them. Flash forward, 9/11 happens. Tom Foreman, 2 years after 9/11, was the executive producer of the only film that had the first plane hitting the first building. And he won
Wow.
a Peabody Award. And he won every award that you could win in journalism in his late
Wow.
20s. And he went on, he basically could write his ticket in Hollywood.
You had kept your relationship with him?
Yeah. And he became the creator of Extreme Makeover Home Edition. And he
Ah.
calls me and he's like, Charlie, you are completely unqualified for this job. But if you don't tell anyone, but what he saw in me in the jungle in Borneo, because I was carrying a camera and doing like a video diary, what he saw was someone who would fight through anything. And Extreme Makeover Home Edition was a very hard show to make. I'd stay up for 5 days in a row, sober during this show. And I won awards on the show also.
What was your role? Like, what was the role
Yeah.
that he shaped for you?
I mean, I was a senior producer, but that was my title. But what I really did was not an over the shoulder camera, but kind of a mini DV version. I was the guy, if you ever watched the show, Ty Pennington and all the designers on the show, I was the behind the scenes guy. There'd be the big formal shots, but I would
Right.
follow them around with everything they were doing and building and cursing and having personal moments. And I would go interview some of the families in the neighborhood. I found out I was really good at sitting down with a person, just like we're doing right now, and asking them questions and getting them to open up to me.
And you had a filmmaker behind you while you're asking the questions?
Exactly. And I would be producing in that way. And like, I just kicked ass on that. I mean, it was one of the happiest times I'd ever had. And
Wow.
simultaneously, Charlie, I got, kind of ranked in that same time frame, 03, 04. I was ranked by some rankings the top ultra distance runner in the world. And so I had gone from, you know, addict to being covered in Men's Journal and GQ and all these magazines covering me. And this is before the Sahara even. And
Right,
like
but when you went into the Sahara thing, you already you had chops because
I
you
did.
had these rankings, plus you were a senior producer, so
Yeah.
it wasn't like you were a nobody. He
No,
had to
I
at least
quit the
think,
show to run across the Sahara. Like I had to take a leave of absence because, I was going to go do this big project. And Tom Foreman today, that same guy, he actually is the most prolific producer in Hollywood still today. He's probably got 50 shows on TV these days, mostly on like cable.
before we get to what happened to you in 2010, tell us like how you finished, what happened when you finished, what your life became after doing this like incredible feat.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Sahara was the fulcrum of my life, no doubt. There was, if there's a teeter totter, it is the center point, and both good and bad. There's a lot of good that happened after. There's some really hard things that happen after. But the actual finishing, the completion of the expedition and actually getting to the Red Sea and putting my feet after 4,500 miles into the Red Sea, I think the most poignant thing I could say to you, I had an interview with NPR like within an hour of finishing. And
Wow.
I'm sitting there, I have a baseball sized blister on the bottom of one of my feet, and I'm exhausted and I'm just cooked. We had been elated, feet in the water, hugging each other and crying and like all these things. And the first question I got asked by the woman on the NPR show is obvious question, softball. So how does it feel? Like, how does it feel to be done with this thing? And I paused for a second with no knowledge that I was getting ready to say this, but I said, this might be the saddest day of my life. It just fell out of me because the recognition that not just the 2 years of like getting ready and then doing this thing and all of that, it's over. Again, we spend so much time in our lives trying to accomplish things, but most of us can relate to that idea, just like getting that, you know if wealth is your thing, just like getting that first check for $1 million. I've heard people tell these stories, like, and they get it and then it's like, ooh, that doesn't feel as good as I thought it was going to feel. Like, now I need to get more. And I understood in that moment that I didn't understand how to fill this part of me that still needed a lot of work. And that even running all the way, while I was proud of myself and I took satisfaction,
You had shifted, Charlie, to day by day by day by this point too.
yes, totally. I woke up in a panic at 4 o'clock in the morning for like 10 days straight. Like, oh my God, why am I not running? Why am I not running? But look, it put me on the map. I raised $6 million while I was out there. Matt Damon had a lot to do with that too, but I wasn't doing it for philanthropy. I was doing it to see if I could do it. And I tell people all the time, like, it's great to do things for charity and all of that, but the number one charity you have is you. And if you make yourself better, then you can be of better service to the rest of the world. And so be sure that you're focusing sometimes on things that you want to do. And I kicked ass, man. I signed with William Morris. I got an agent. I got book deals. I got TV. I got all these things. My speaking contracts were through the roof, and like I couldn't even keep up with all of them. It was great. But I still recognized at that point that I didn't know what I didn't know. I still wasn't filling that part of me that needed some extra work.